We are in Juterbog, in Germany, a small, quiet German town, typical like so many others, except this has an incredible military history. It saw famines and fires and wars, and even a visit from Martin Luther. Now, the battles of the 30 and the 7-Year War left its mark on the small town, not just due to the fighting here, but also due to the looting by foreign armies from time to time, such as after the Battle of Jena and Austerlitz. In 1824, as a way out of economic hardship, the citizens here asked for soldiers to be stationed, and in 1832, as part of the Prussian 3rd Artillery Brigade, was billeted here. In 1841, Juterbog Rail Station was opened to the Berlin-Anhalt Railway. From 1864, the artillery was stationed here in Juterbog, and it had its own firing range, and 2 barrack camps was also purchased by the Prussian military in 1870. The Juterbog Artillery School was founded here, and in 1893, the town was connected to the Royal Prussian Military Railway. During World War I, there were 2 airship hangars here as well. There was an airfield that was further expanded in 1933 and 34, and also there was a communications school, intelligence school, motorized balloon unit, for weather, and there were several assault gun units here. One of them was Assault Gun Battalion 236. Someone here has written a book about them. There was also a technical aviation school. There's a lot of military going on here besides just the firing ranges and the munitions production. See, it's not very often when you get to sneak around, look at military history locations, that you have somebody with a key, which means jumping fences sometimes may happen. I've heard about this. I could never condone that myself. So, thank God we have a man with a key. And you all know how I like to find big things. And guess what? This is a big thing. Kind of want one, but I really don't know where to put it. Let's see what it does.
That's the old shooting range to adjust the weapons of an airplane. Now see from inside some remains. There was the possibility to move targets to the left, to the right, up and down. Had a technique installed inside to move the targets up and down, left and right. And in only about 50 meters they had placed an airplane. The back of the fuselage was lifted, that the airplane comes in a position like it is in the air. And in this position they fired the guns to the target, and they adjusted the guns that the bullets come together in a distance they wanted. By moving the targets, they could simulate the distance they wanted the bullets have together in the air. For example, 300 meters or 400 meters. And in this airfield, there was an aircraft workshop to rebuild and to repair every type of airplane which operated around this area. And so they changed the machine guns from time to time, and new built-in machine guns has to be adjusted.
So they tested the cannon here too?
As far as I know, yes, because if you have a plane in the workshop and you want it make ready for operation again, then that means you have all weapons of this plane make in a operational condition.
So this has how thick is the backdrop? Because it had to be pretty thick to withstand.
Yes and no. According to our measurement, the back wall is maybe 1 meter. But as we use it today, there is there's a filling of sand, and the bullets hit first the sand and not the wall. If you are interested, we have in some other ranges where the Russians fired directly to the wall, and it's only a question of time. The wall can thick as you want, there's no problem, but you come through the wall and there's a hole.
Sooner or later.
Sooner or later.
Sooner or later. Now, honestly, you don't get to see this very often. There cannot possibly be that many more World War II testing stations left. I believe there was one for Spitfires and Hurricanes in England, but here in Germany, where they actually tested the cannons, machine guns for the planes getting ready for battle, there cannot be that many of these testing stations. This is rare.
And here you can check what I said before. If the, for example, EF 109 is firing in a position like it fired in the air, the bullets come in, I would say, about 2 or 2.50 meters. And this sand we have now in this area would be enough to protect the concrete wall against the bullets. Some remains of the moving system, left and right of this bullet catcher, there was room for machines. And these machines make the targets which hung from above, made these targets movable.
And the rails on the ceiling here is where the targets would be hanging.
Yes. Most secure.
I mean, if you are shooting machine guns and cannons into a concrete structure.
Could be ammunition storage.
You had some heavy hinges.
But I think for technical operations on the airfield and in the workshops, the airplanes were usually standard without ammunition. Yeah. They are not full of ammunition when they work in the airfield.
Yeah.
Therefore, I think they came here, they were brought here without ammunition, and the test ammunition they needed, that was only here put in the airplane. In some pictures I saw, for example, they had a round shield they put on the propeller axle and fired the guns. And then they can see on the shield where the bullets took holes in the shield. Oh. Then you had an example what time the bullets are released by shooting, because the synchronizing of the MGs needs to stop firing when the blade is in front of the muzzle, and let's keep firing when the blade is a little bit further on.
I mean, it really is very undignified to shoot yourself down. Some Russian what? Oh, writing.
Writing.
Did they use this as a small weapons range?
This was, I think, used by officers, some pistol practice in a short distance, and around this a lot of waste. We had to remove a lot of waste. But I like these.
I can't help but to wonder how many of these buildings are still around somewhere. I've never seen one, not on any of the airfields I've visited. So this is really unique. It's great to see how things used to be done.
The basement was fulfilled with sand completely. Fences. That's our. No, I think there was no office.
And then you see something right here off to the side of the runways, behind the plane bunkers. Of course, you had munition storage that are now filling these woods. That was built after the war. And remember what I said when we were in the woods looking at the nuclear bunker. You look at these platforms. Okay, there's another building over there. But these slabs are seen everywhere because you need to bring in the vehicles to wherever and whatever. So here you have one of the old munition storages. That's getting a little long in the tooth. And you would have, they were probably sealed. Basically just a room with a vent and sloping roof. And you have the hangers in the ceiling and on the walls. I don't even think there was an office. As you see with most military munitions today, you have bunkers all over Europe that are full of them from all different eras. They're locked and now they have various degrees of surveillance. But there's nothing there. There's no one stationed there. There's there's an access control guard post sometimes, but not always. The other room. Seriously, you would think that these bunkers, these places will last. They're built to last and they'll be here for a while. And you would think this would be a great place for a museum or a motorcycle repair shop. You could stick a couple of Harleys in there. But here, off the main road out there where we parked, there's a gate. Offshoots coming through the main road to the munition storages, administration on the other side, the runways down there. Now here you have windows, doors, and somebody's using this privately now for storage of hay. At least it's being used for something. I'm not sure what facility this was before the hay moved in. Hey now. And again, you had a big hall. You had mounts on the ceiling. Here you see those quite a bit. And here you had on the side. I would imagine you might even keep cattle in here. Here there used to be doors. I would imagine armored doors here as well. This has been damaged and it is sagging a little bit, which is interesting. I don't understand. It would take a bit for it to do that. But I don't see any built-in hinges as you would in some of the World War II bunkers. I see what would probably could have been a sliding door. This might have been a less secure storage facility. The far side of the building, where I was right in there before, and here we have again a lot of hay, could be the vehicles that will be used to transport the munitions to the planes. Having those nearby in case of air attack or any other such thing would make sense. You pull the vehicles from here, get the munitions, go straight to the planes, and they would all be secure. A lot of lessons were learned from World War II and every war since on aircraft security, vulnerability of airports, vulnerability of soft-skinned vehicles, troops, soldiers. So everything had to be protected. It makes sense that you have your munition storage there, you have the vehicles to transport the munitions over here, also under reinforced concrete structures, so they could mount up quickly and go straight to the planes, which are right down there. It would be quick and it would be safe, because the vehicles wouldn't have to travel at any distance.
We are in Altes Lager at an airfield which was installed about 1935, originally by the German Luftwaffe, and was operated by the German Luftwaffe until the end of the war, 1945. And after the Germans, the Russian occupied this part of Germany, but they used the German airfield for Russian purposes. And the shelters you can see, they were erected after the experience of the second war between Israel and Egypt, because the Russians learned how easy airplanes on the ground could be destroyed, and therefore they built the shelters to protect their airplanes on the ground. All the aircraft shelters are turned a little bit, that you cannot, with an attack, hit more than one of the doors. The angle is always different. If you want to hit the door by 90 degrees, you have one attack, and for the next shelter you have another attack and another and another.
So they have 3 squadrons, 12 hangars each, that helicopters here as well?
Yes.
And what they also did, they had always had 2 planes ready for scramble, just like we did in the West. Now this was East Germany at the time, and during the Cold War we would play with each other. We would test each other's air defenses and do reconnaissance, and we all remember the Gary Powers thing when he was shot down with the U-2. What most people don't know is all those secret battles that took place during the Cold War that was never publicized. You wouldn't read them in the newspaper, and one of them originated here. There was an RB-66 reconnaissance plane of the U.S. Air Force, kind of, I'm sure it was an accident, crossed over the border, and 2 jets were scrambled from here, and they shot it down. Now, all the pilots survived, and what was interesting about this is you'd think during the Cold War, American pilots shot down reconnaissance aircraft. Gary Powers, let's go to Moscow, have a show trial like they did back then. But that wasn't the case here.
When the pilots were on the ground, the Russians arrested them, and as far as they are injured, they became medical aid, and the US military mission stationed in Potsdam, also in the Russian occupation zone, they were informed that their US plane came down in the Russian zone, and US military liaison mission, they tried to come in contact with their pilots, and after a short time this contact was granted, and they could care about their men. And another thing is important: the border between the Russian zone and the Western occupation zones was sensible, and when the Western plane came near the border, it was not the job of the East German Air Force to care about. It was only a job of the Russian Air Force. Then never an East German plane should be in contact with a US plane. The Russians said, that's our part, stay at home.
Was that a trust issue or a tactical issue that the Russians did not have full confidence in the East German Air Force, or was it politics? Why was that?
The Russians made always clear that only one have the command in the Russian occupation zone, and these are not the East Germans but the Russians.
Someone asked me the other day, why was all the German bunkers and these big amazing forts, some of them blown up, by the Polish. I said, well, this was not the decision of the Polish. After the Russians moved in, they made all the decisions in the occupied territories ever since the end of World War II. It's not like oh yeah, it wasn't a democracy. I think that's the word.
The military missions they're based on 3 contracts or treaties. There was one between, that was the first one between UK and the Russians. The second one was between France and the Russians, and the third one between US and the Russians. And every contract has 2 sides. The Russians brought one mission to the US Commander-in-Chief. They had their office in Frankfurt am Main, and the US Commander-in-Chief brought his mission to the Russian Commander-in-Chief. The Russian Commander-in-Chief was first in Potsdam. Therefore, the Western missions were also stationed in Potsdam, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Russians later on moved from Potsdam to Wunstorf. Therefore, in the western part, the missions were near the Commander-in-Chief of their zone, and in the Russian zone, the missions were in Potsdam and the Commander-in-Chief were in Wunstorf.
And this was set up specifically after World War II, I'm guessing, when they were allied, and then for the Cold War to avoid...
The contracts were made in 1946 and 47.
And this was specifically, was that because they wanted to make sure they had easy flow of communication in case things happened, so they wouldn't get into a shooting war, but they could quickly get in?
Two sides of the matter. The first, you are right, they need a channel of communication very quickly without a lot of obstacles. But the other part of the matter is the missions have to look around in the whole Russian occupation zone and have to look out for activities which could be give a signal of a higher alert, higher readiness, and maybe some higher risk for war. A bunch of spies, but with the allowance of the occupation zone. That is, I think it is one piece to stay in balance between West and East. The Eastern missions in the Western zone, they did the same, and as long as they give message to the office, okay, nothing happened, all as before, they are quiet. And if there any activity which is which could be a sign to
early warning.
Early warning. That's the word I am looking for. So I think the altogether 6 missions, 3 Russians and 3 Western. They was very important to keep the Cold War cold. In Wunstorf, the French, as I know, the French and the US Commander-in-Chief, 4-star generals, they visited their Russian part, the Russian Commander-in-Chief. They visited the commander in his headquarters. That means high-level Western generals. They visited the area of GDR without knowledge of the GDR. They were invited by the Russian and only by the Russian. And the same was in the Western zones. I know at least one time General Zaitsev went to the US zone, to Frankfurt. And he was not invited by the Western government, he was invited only by the US Commander-in-Chief. And if there are any situation which is not very clear, you can pick up the telephone and you can ask your counterpart, Hi Boris, or what else, what happens? Just tell me what do you want to do. And this direct contact, I think, brings a hot situation cool.
Behind here's another one of the large hangars. Back here is the coming out to the main runway where the tower was. And you have another hangar here.
The original tower is that what you see right now, and as far as I know, it was erected in 1935.
And it was used by the Russians after the war as well.
Yes, it was erected by the German Luftwaffe, and when the Russians take over the airfield, they used all the existing facilities.
And again you see these old aircraft hangars being repurposed for different things, which is it's nice to see these being not torn down but repurposed. See the arches inside. Here they built this wall to put a smaller door in, and back here is the backstop for the gate. The gates would slide open on rails and they would land on these. You can clearly tell I'm on one of the old German roads again. A lot of cobblestone out here in the middle of the beautiful nature, and you know it fits. We are looking at an old German airfield that was founded in the 30s, where there's still some of the buildings left, and it is a phenomenal piece of history. This is one of the old storage buildings that eventually was taken over by the Russians. You see the Russian writing. And there's one interesting detail that you don't see very often.
The Russians are always very afraid against lightnings, because the damage lightning can do. And therefore all the Russian facilities had a strong lightning protection, as you can see here. All the bars are connected, and there goes another lightning rod to the roof, where it should prevent lightnings to damage the building.
All the Russian soldiers presumably put their names in here 86, 88. So this is the wall where you 76, 87. This is all the Russian soldiers that went out and did a little. You vandalized your building, and by putting your name in so they can find you. I don't know how clever that was. This is actually a fun piece of history, because this, although during the Cold War, is an interesting visual of who was here. And you kind of wonder, 91, you kind of wonder if the Russian soldiers who were stationed here ever come back and visit their old names. Nikita, when you see this video, would you just give me a call? Find me up on Facebook and give me a call. Tell me how it was to be stationed here. And yes, I picked him because it's one of the only names I can pronounce and read. It's just a fascinating old building, just to see these here. It's a little sad to see when they start tearing down these buildings as opposed to repurposing them, but I guess that is the way of things, and that's why we're here to document them while we're still here.
Hangars from a German Air Force, Luftwaffe, and you said before for bigger planes than fighters. That's not exactly what it was, because most of the planes on this airfield, they had the size of fighters, either fighters itself or training planes, and the hangars are this large to contain a whole squadron. The original paintings on the hangars was Squadron 1, Squadron 2, Squadron 3. Altes Lager, this this airfield was not bombed. There was only, as far as I know, one single bomb attack to Juterbog, but not to Altes Lager. In the early times they had trainers like Focke-Wulf 50, 56 or 60, 65, Focke-Wulf trainers. Then they had BF 109, and then later on they had Focke-Wulf 190. In 1944, maybe beginning in 43, they belonged to the so-called Reichsverteidigung, to attack the bomber streams to the locations in eastern Germany, Berlin, but also Dresden or Leipzig.
Did they fly here against the Russian front, the Eastern Front, as it came closer?
Only in 1945. I think they had a missile operation. I think there was a missile operations going on to attack the bridges of the river Oder. The missile was to put a two-engine to add remote control to a two-engine plane, and the room of the two-engine plane was completely filled with explosive, and the nose of this two-engine plane, where originally the pilot seat is installed, was closed. And to use the remote control, there was a small fighter plane connected above the two-engine plane, and the fighter plane could guide the two-engine plane to the target, and before the target, two-engine plane was released and was by remote control tried to hit the target. This is original Russian painting.
Of course, the Russians used these after the war.
Yes, they used it after the war.
The doors are original, the buildings are original, and a lot of history took place in these buildings, which is why it's so great to see them still here.
In the 1930s, the German Luftwaffe installed a school, a very large school complex for technicians for aircraft repair and building. It was called Höhere Technische Fliegerschule. And after the World War II, the Russians used this school complex for their purposes.
All these buildings were built for the German Air Force, the technical school, which is a huge complex that we sometimes can get a guided tour for, or can take one. After the war, the Russians used it, of course, put a star on it, which is really still a very interesting place. Behind me is the other side of the technical school for the Air Force, and over here, of course, is the football stadium that was built, and we're fairly certain it was built 35, 34, 36, because it has that classical 1930s German architecture. And these buildings they're actually beautiful buildings, they really were, and they were sturdy and durable, and it's glad that the football stadium is now being used for the community center for the whole area. I would love them to do something with these buildings, but decay is taking its place inside. Fortunately, in some of them, there are, interestingly enough, some Russian graffiti from what I hear. Maybe other things. Maybe we'll get to sneak in on a tour one of these days.